The morning sun beat down on Lincoln High School's outdoor track as students gathered for their fourth period PE class. Michael Chen, a 15-year-old sophomore, stood nervously at the starting line, tugging at his oversized gray gym shirt that never seemed to hide his weight as much as he hoped it would. Around him, his classmates chatted and stretched, getting ready for their mandatory mile run assessment. Coach Brad Thompson, a tall man with graying hair and a permanent scowl, paced back and forth in front of the students. His bright red polo shirt had "Coach" printed on the back in bold white letters, and a silver whistle hung around his neck like a weapon ready to be used. He had been teaching PE at Lincoln High for 20 years, and everyone knew him as the toughest teacher in school. "Listen up." Coach Thompson's voice boomed across the track. 4 laps around the track. This is your final assessment for the semester. Anyone who can't finish in under 12 minutes will have to run it again next week. His eyes landed on Michael, and a small smirk appeared on his face. No excuses. Michael's heart started beating faster, and not just because of the upcoming run. He had been dreading this day for weeks. His previous attempts at completing the mile run had all ended the same way, with him being the last person to finish, breathing heavily and facing Coach Thompson's disapproving glare. The whistle pierced the air, and students began running. Michael started at a slow jog, trying to pace himself like his mom had suggested. For the first lap, things weren't too bad. He stayed in the middle of the pack, focusing on putting one foot in front of the other. Some of his classmates had already pulled far ahead, their forms getting smaller as they rounded the far curve of the track. By the second lap, Michael's legs began to feel heavy. His breathing became more labored, and sweat soaked through his shirt. He could hear the fast runners already finishing their third lap, their feet pounding against the track as they passed him. Coach Thompson's voice rang out, calling their times as they ran past. "Pick up the pace, Chen," Coach Thompson shouted as Michael struggled through his third lap. "My grandmother could walk faster than that." Several students who had already finished snickered at the comment, making Michael's cheeks burn with shame. The sun felt even hotter now, and Michael's vision began to blur slightly. His legs felt like they were made of lead, and each step required more effort than the last. Other students walked along the inside of the track, having finished their mile, watching as he continued to struggle. As Michael finally entered his fourth and final lap, Coach Thompson's taunts became more frequent and cruel. "Come on, Chen. This is pathetic. This is why you'll never make it in any sport. You're just too fat and lazy to put in the effort." The words hit Michael like physical blows. He could feel tears forming in his eyes, but he blinked them back desperately. He wouldn't give Coach Thompson the satisfaction of seeing him cry. A few kind-hearted classmates called out words of encouragement, but their voices were drowned out by the sound of his heavy breathing and Coach Thompson's continued insults. 10 minutes. Coach Thompson announced loudly. "At this rate, you'll be here until lunchtime, Chen. Maybe missing a meal wouldn't be such a bad thing for you." Michael finally crossed the finish line at 13 minutes and 20 seconds, his legs trembling and his lungs burning. He bent over, hands on his knees, trying to catch his breath. The rest of the class had gathered around, some looking at him with pity, others avoiding eye contact altogether. Coach Thompson walked over, his clipboard in hand. 13 minutes and 20 seconds, Chen. That's even worse than last time." He spoke loud enough for everyone to hear. "You know what this means. You'll be running it again next week. Though looking at you, I doubt an extra week will make any difference. Some people just aren't cut out for physical activity." The bell rang, signaling the end of class. As students headed toward the locker rooms, Michael remained rooted to the spot, his coach's words echoing in his head. A few tears finally escaped, rolling down his cheeks, but he quickly wiped them away with his sleeve. In all his 15 years, he had never felt so humiliated and worthless. What Michael didn't know, as he slowly walked to the locker room that day, was that this moment would become the catalyst for a change that would affect not just his life, but the entire school community. But for now, he just focused on putting one foot in front of the other, trying to hold himself together until he could find a quiet place to let his tears fall freely. The next 2 weeks at Lincoln High School felt like the longest of Michael Chen's life. Every morning, he would stand in front of his closet, trying to find the baggiest clothes possible to hide himself. His once favorite blue hoodie had become like armor, pulled up over his head as he walked through the school hallways, trying to become invisible. During lunch breaks, Michael stopped eating in the cafeteria, Instead, he found a quiet corner in the library where he could eat his lunch alone, hidden behind tall shelves of books. His lunchbox, which his mother carefully packed each morning, often returned home barely touched. The turkey sandwiches and fresh fruit she included were replaced by untouched containers and worried glances. Mrs. Chen noticed the changes in her son first. She saw how he pushed his food around his plate at dinner, taking small bites only when she or his father looked his way. Michael, who used to share stories about his day at school, now answered questions with short yes or no responses before asking to be excused from the table. "Something's wrong with Michael," Mrs. Chen said to her husband one evening after their son had gone to his room. "He's not eating, barely talking. This isn't like him." Mr. Chen nodded, his forehead creased with concern. "His grades are dropping too. I got an email from his math teacher today. He's missing assignments, something he's never done before." In his room, Michael sat at his desk, staring at his unopened textbooks. His phone buzzed with messages from friends asking if he wanted to play online games, but he ignored them. The words Coach Thompson had said kept repeating in his head. Too fat, lazy, pathetic. Each time he thought about PE class, his stomach twisted into knots. When Thursday came around, the day of his PE class, Michael woke up feeling sick. His hands shook as he got dressed, and he barely touched his breakfast. In first period English, he couldn't focus on the lesson about Shakespeare. In second period history, he kept watching the clock, counting down the minutes until fourth period PE. 20 minutes before PE class, Michael walked into the nurse's office, claiming he had a bad stomach ache. The nurse, Mrs. Parker, looked at him with kind eyes as she took his temperature. Finding no fever, she still noticed how pale and anxious he looked. "Would you like to rest here for a while?" she asked gently, gesturing to one of the small beds separated by white curtains. Michael nodded quickly, relief flooding through him. As he lay on the bed, staring at the ceiling, he could hear the distant sound of Coach Thompson's whistle from the outdoor track. His chest felt tight, but at least he was safe here. This became his new routine. Each week, he found different excuses to skip PE. Sometimes it was a headache, other times a forgotten doctor's appointment. His parents received notes from the school about his increasing absences, adding to their growing worry. One evening, while doing homework, Michael overheard his parents talking in the kitchen. "I called the school today," his mother said in a low voice. "Asked to speak with his PE teacher, Coach Thompson. He said Michael was being dramatic and needed to toughen up." "Toughen up?" His father's voice rose slightly. "Something's hurting our son, and that's his response." Michael quietly closed his bedroom door, not wanting to hear more. He opened his laptop and looked at his grades. The screen showed numbers that made his stomach sink. Math, C. English, C+. History, C. Just 2 months ago, he had been a straight A student. At school, rumors started spreading. Some students whispered that he had a serious illness. Others suggested he was just trying to get out of class. His few close friends tried to reach out, but Michael pushed them away, making excuses about being busy or not feeling well. During one lunch period, hiding in his usual spot in the library, Michael overheard 2 teachers talking on the other side of the bookshelf. "Have you seen Michael Chen lately?" one asked. "He used to be such a bright, engaged student." "I know," the other replied. "It's like watching a completely different person. Something must have happened." Michael sank deeper into his chair, pulling his hoodie tighter around himself. The half-eaten apple on his desk suddenly looked unappetizing. He pulled out his phone and scrolled through old photos. Pictures from just a few months ago showing him smiling with friends, participating in class activities, living a normal life. The person in those photos felt like a stranger now. What nobody realized was that while Michael was becoming more invisible to the world, a storm was building inside him. Sometimes the quietest moments hide the biggest changes, and Michael's silence was about to give way to something unexpected. On a cold Friday night, Michael Chen couldn't sleep. The clock on his bedside table showed 11:30 p.m., but his mind wouldn't stop racing with thoughts about another failed attempt to attend PE class earlier that day. Frustrated with staring at his ceiling, he decided to take a walk, something he only did late at night when no one could see him. After leaving a note for his parents saying he went for a short walk, Michael put on his familiar blue hoodie and stepped out into the quiet night. The streets were mostly empty, with only the occasional car passing by. The cool air felt good on his face as he walked without any particular destination in mind. After about 20 minutes of walking, Michael found himself in a part of town he rarely visited. Most businesses were closed, their windows dark and silent. But one building caught his attention, the gym called Martinez Fitness, that still had lights on inside. Through the large front windows, he could see various exercise equipment and a few people working out despite the late hour. As Michael stood there watching, a woman inside noticed him. She was in her early 30s, athletic but not intimidating, with dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. Instead of ignoring him like most people did these days, she smiled and walked toward the door. "Hey there," she called out, opening the door. "I'm Sarah Martinez, owner of this place. Would you like to come in? It's pretty cold out there." Michael hesitated, pulling his hoodie tighter around himself, but something about Sarah's friendly smile made him take a step forward. I was just looking," he mumbled. "Well, you picked a good time to look," Sarah said, holding the door open. "We're actually open 24/7, and these late hours are my favorite. Less crowded, more peaceful." Michael found himself following her inside. The gym was different from what he expected. Instead of mirrors everywhere and people flexing their muscles, it had a comfortable, welcoming feel. The walls were painted in warm colors, and motivational quotes about self-improvement and personal growth decorated the space. "So, what brings you out this late?" Sarah asked, leading him to a small sitting area near the front desk. She grabbed 2 bottles of water from a mini fridge, offering one to Michael. Maybe it was the late hour, or perhaps it was Sarah's kind face, but Michael found himself telling her everything. He talked about Coach Thompson, the humiliation during PE class, his falling grades, and how he felt trapped in a cycle he couldn't escape. Sarah listened without interrupting, her expression growing serious. When Michael finished, she was quiet for a moment before speaking. "You know what I see when I look at you?" she asked. "I see potential, not just for physical change, but for something much more important, inner strength." She stood up and gestured for Michael to follow her. They walked through the gym, past the weight machines and cardio equipment. "Every person in here has a story," she explained. "See that man over there?" She pointed to an older gentleman doing careful stretches in the corner. He started coming here after a stroke. Doctors said he might never walk normally again. Now he's training for a 5K walk. Michael watched as Sarah greeted different people working out, each one returning her smile with genuine warmth. This wasn't just a gym, it was a community. "Listen," Sarah said, turning back to Michael. "I have a proposition for you. Come train with me during these quiet hours. No judgment, no pressure, just guidance and support. We'll start slowly, focusing on what you can do, not what you can't." Michael's immediate instinct was to say no, to retreat back to his safe isolation, but something in Sarah's confident, caring manner made him pause. "Why would you help me?" he asked quietly. Sarah's expression softened. "Because 13 years ago I was you. Different circumstances, same feelings of helplessness and shame. Someone believed in me when I didn't believe in myself, and that changed everything. Sometimes we all need someone in our corner." She pulled out a business card and wrote her cell phone number on the back. "Think about it. If you decide you want to try, text me anytime. We can start tomorrow, or next week, or whenever you're ready. The important thing is taking that first step." As Michael walked home that night, clutching Sarah's card in his pocket, he felt something he hadn't experienced in weeks: hope. The night air didn't feel as cold anymore, and the weight on his shoulders seemed just a little lighter. For the first time since Coach Thompson's cruel words, he could imagine a different future for himself. That night, Michael slept better than he had in weeks, Sarah's card carefully placed on his bedside table, ready for when he would find the courage to use it. It took Michael 3 days to gather the courage to send Sarah a text message. His hands shook as he typed. "Hi, this is Michael from Friday night. Is your offer still open?" Sarah's response came within minutes, setting up their first training session for that evening at 9 p.m. When Michael arrived at Martinez Fitness, Sarah was waiting with a warm smile and a notebook. "Before we touch any equipment," she said, leading him to the sitting area, "let's talk about what success looks like for you." To Michael's surprise, they spent that first hour just talking. Sarah didn't mention weight loss or running times. Instead, she asked about his interests, his daily routine, and what activities he used to enjoy before Coach Thompson's bullying changed everything. "The first thing we need to do," Sarah explained, writing in her notebook, "is rebuild your relationship with movement. Exercise isn't punishment, it's celebration of what your body can do." They started small. Sarah taught Michael basic stretches and simple bodyweight exercises he could do at home. She showed him proper breathing techniques and explained how different movements affected different muscle groups. Most importantly, she never rushed him or made him feel inadequate. "Remember," she would say during their sessions, "everyone in this gym started somewhere. The only person you're competing with is yourself." As weeks passed, Michael found himself looking forward to his evening sessions with Sarah. They established a routine. 3 days a week, always during the quiet late hours when the gym was nearly empty. Sarah introduced new exercises gradually, always focusing on proper form and building confidence. 1 month into their training, Sarah noticed Michael spending more time looking at the treadmill. "Would you like to try it?" she asked gently, knowing his history with running. Michael nodded slowly. "But what if I can't do it?" "Then we'll try again another day," Sarah replied simply. "Success isn't about never failing. It's about getting back up when you do." That night, Michael walked on the treadmill for 15 minutes. It wasn't running, and it wasn't fast, but it was movement without shame. Sarah stayed beside him the whole time, talking about her own journey as a trainer and sharing stories about other clients who had overcome similar challenges. As winter turned to spring, Michael's transformation became noticeable. His clothes fit differently, but more importantly, his confidence grew. He started standing straighter, making eye contact with people, and even smiling more often. His parents noticed he was eating regular meals again, and his grades began to improve. Sarah's training went beyond just physical exercise. She taught Michael about nutrition, not through restrictive diets but by explaining how different foods fueled the body. She showed him how to read food labels, prepare simple healthy snacks, and listen to his body's hunger and fullness signals. "Food is not the enemy," she would remind him. "It's fuel for all the amazing things your body can do." During one session, while Michael was doing a set of push-ups, something he couldn't even attempt when they started, Sarah brought up an important point. "You know, Michael," she said, "strength isn't just physical. I've watched you push through fear, self-doubt, and bad memories. That takes more courage than lifting any weight." 4 months into their training, Michael achieved something he never thought possible. He ran a full mile on the treadmill without stopping. It wasn't as fast as his classmates could run, but that didn't matter. When he finished, tears rolled down his face, not tears of shame like before, but tears of pride. Sarah gave him a high five and said, "You see, you were capable of this all along. Sometimes we just need someone to remind us of our own strength." That night, as Michael was leaving the gym, Sarah handed him a new training plan. "I think you're ready for the next phase," she said with a proud smile. "How do you feel about joining our morning group sessions?" Michael looked at the paper, then back at Sarah. 6 months ago, the thought of exercising in front of others would have sent him running away in panic. Now, he felt ready to take on this new challenge. "I think," he said slowly, a confident smile spreading across his face, "it's time to stop hiding in the dark." As he walked home that night, Michael realized something important. His body hadn't just gotten stronger. His spirit had too. And with this new strength came the courage to face what he knew would be his biggest challenge yet, returning to Coach Thompson's class. The first day of the new school year arrived with a mix of excitement and nervousness for Michael Chen. Standing in front of his bedroom mirror, he barely recognized himself. His blue hoodie, once a shield to hide behind, now hung loosely on his shoulders. More importantly, the person looking back at him stood tall, with confidence in his eyes. Walking through Lincoln High's main entrance, Michael noticed the surprised looks from his classmates. Many hadn't seen him since last semester, and the change was obvious. Some students did a double take, while others whispered to their friends, pointing in his direction. "Michael, is that really you?" called out Jason, one of his old friends from math class. "Man, you look different." Before Michael could respond, the bell rang for first period. As he walked to class, he heard more whispers and saw more pointing. This time, though, it didn't make him want to disappear. Sarah's words echoed in his mind. "You earned every bit of this change. Own it." The real test came during fourth period. Michael changed into his PE uniform in the locker room, no longer trying to hide in the corner. As he walked out to the track, he heard the familiar sound of Coach Thompson's whistle. Coach Thompson was taking attendance, his eyes fixed on his clipboard. When he called out Chen Michael and looked up, his usual scowl froze on his face. He blinked several times, clearly thrown off by Michael's transformation. Well, Coach Thompson said, trying to recover his usual commanding tone. Look who decided to stop skipping class. Did you finally decide to take my advice about getting in shape? The other students fell silent, watching the interaction. Michael felt his heart racing, but not from fear this time. He stood his ground, meeting Coach Thompson's gaze directly. Actually, Coach, Michael replied clearly, his voice steady, I found someone who knew how to teach without using shame as a weapon. Coach Thompson's face reddened. Excuse me? He snapped. Are you suggesting I don't know how to do my job? My methods get results. Just look at you. My tough love obviously worked. Michael shook his head. This wasn't because of you, Coach. This happened because I found a real mentor. Someone who showed me that being a good teacher means building people up, not tearing them down. The coach took a step forward, his authority challenged in front of the entire class. Listen here, Chen. You may have lost some weight, but that doesn't give you the right to question my teaching methods. I've been doing this for 20 years. Maybe that's the problem, Michael responded, his voice growing stronger. 20 years of making students feel worthless instead of helping them grow. Do you know how many nights I couldn't sleep because of your words? How many students have dropped out of sports or started hating exercise because of your tough love? Other students began nodding, some even mumbling in agreement. Coach Thompson looked around, suddenly aware that he was losing control of the situation. This is unacceptable behavior, the coach sputtered, his face now deep red. Principal's office now. Michael picked up his bag calmly. You know what? You're right. We should go to the principal's office. I have some things I'd like to discuss with her about your teaching methods. As Michael walked toward the school building, he heard footsteps behind him. Turning around, he saw 3 other students following him. We're coming too, said Emma, a quiet girl who had also struggled in PE. Michael's right. Someone needs to speak up about how Coach Thompson treats us. Coach Thompson watched in disbelief as more students began to step forward, ready to share their own stories. His face shifted from anger to concern as he realized this wasn't just about Michael anymore. You're making a big mistake, Coach Thompson called out, but his voice lacked its usual authority. This isn't over, Chen. Michael turned back one last time. You're right, Coach. It's not over. It's just beginning. As he walked to the principal's office with his classmates, Michael felt a strange mix of emotions. He was nervous about what would happen next, but proud of finally standing up not just for himself, but for every student who had ever felt humiliated in Coach Thompson's class. Sarah had taught him more than just physical strength. She had shown him the power of using his voice for positive change. Principal Martinez, no relation to Sarah, sat behind her desk, looking at the group of students gathered in her office. Michael Chen sat in the middle, with Emma Wilson and 3 other students beside him. Their PE teacher, Coach Thompson, stood by the wall, his arms crossed and his face still red with anger. Let me understand this clearly, Principal Martinez said, adjusting her glasses. You're all here to file formal complaints about Coach Thompson's teaching methods? Michael took a deep breath and spoke first. Yes, ma'am. It's not just about today. This has been going on for a long time. He pulled out a small notebook where he had written down dates and specific incidents of Coach Thompson's bullying. He called me worthless in front of the entire class, Michael continued, his voice steady. He said I would never amount to anything because of my weight. Those were his exact words. Emma raised her hand nervously. He does it to lots of students, she added. Last semester, he made Jenny Morris cry because she couldn't climb the rope in gymnastics. He told her she was embarrassing herself and her family. Coach Thompson stepped forward. This is ridiculous. I motivate my students. Sometimes they need a firm hand to push them to excellence. You can't coddle kids these days. Principal Martinez held up her hand, silencing him. Coach Thompson, please wait outside while I speak with the students. After he left, she turned back to the group. I want each of you to tell me your experiences. Take your time. For the next hour, stories poured out. Michael told his complete story, including how he had started skipping classes and how his grades had suffered. Emma shared how she had developed anxiety about coming to school on PE days. Other students described similar experiences of humiliation and fear. "Would you be willing to put all of this in writing?" Principal Martinez asked, her expression serious. When the students nodded, she continued, "I'll need you to fill out these incident report forms. Be as specific as possible. Include dates, exact words used, and any witnesses." While they were filling out the forms, there was a knock at the office door. The school counselor, Mr. Rodriguez, entered with 3 more students who wanted to file complaints about Coach Thompson. "News travels fast," Mr. Rodriguez said. "These students came to my office asking how they could report similar experiences." Principal Martinez nodded gravely. "We'll need statements from all of you. Mr. Rodriguez, could you please help them with the paperwork?" By the end of the school day, 12 students had come forward with complaints. Michael's parents arrived at the school, having been called in for a meeting. They brought with them documentation of Michael's declining grades and notes from his doctor about his anxiety symptoms. "We should have noticed sooner," Mrs. Chen said, her voice thick with emotion. "We knew something was wrong, but we never imagined a teacher could be so cruel to students." Principal Martinez typed quickly on her computer as she listened to everyone's statements. "This is a serious situation," she explained. "I've contacted the school board, and they're calling an emergency meeting for tomorrow morning. They'll want to hear directly from some of you." Michael raised his hand. "I have someone else who might be able to help," he said. "My trainer, Sarah Martinez. She's helped me understand the difference between real coaching and bullying. Maybe she could speak about proper teaching methods." The principal smiled. "That's an excellent idea, Michael. The more professional perspective we have, the better." As they left the principal's office that afternoon, Michael felt both exhausted and relieved. In the hallway, other students stopped to thank him for speaking up. Some shared their own stories of Coach Thompson's behavior, promising to come forward too. "You started something big," Emma said as they walked out of school. "I can't believe we stayed quiet for so long." Michael thought about how different he felt from the scared, ashamed student he had been 6 months ago. "Sometimes," he replied, remembering Sarah's words, "we just need one person to stand up first. Then others find their courage too." That evening, Michael called Sarah to tell her about everything that had happened. She listened proudly as he described standing up to Coach Thompson. "Remember what I told you about strength?" she asked. "This is what real strength looks like, using your voice to help others. Tomorrow at the school board meeting, just tell your truth. That's all you need to do." As Michael prepared for bed that night, he felt strangely calm. Tomorrow would be challenging, but he was ready. The truth about Coach Thompson's bullying would finally come to light, and things at Lincoln High would never be the same again. The school board meeting room was packed with people on Thursday morning. Parents, teachers, and students filled every chair, with more standing along the walls. Michael sat in the front row between his parents, watching as the 5 school board members took their seats at the long table up front. Dr. Williams, the school board president, called the emergency meeting to order. Her stern expression showed she understood the seriousness of the situation. "Today we're addressing multiple complaints filed against Coach Brad Thompson regarding his conduct as a physical education teacher at Lincoln High School." Coach Thompson sat at a small table to the right, wearing a suit instead of his usual red polo shirt. His lawyer whispered something in his ear as Dr. Williams continued speaking. "We'll hear testimony from students first," she announced. "Michael Chen, please come forward." Michael walked to the podium, his heart pounding but his steps steady. He had practiced his speech with Sarah last night, and her words echoed in his mind. "Just tell your truth." "My name is Michael Chen," he began, his voice clear and strong. 6 months ago, I was as straight a student who loved school. That changed when Coach Thompson decided to use my weight as a target for public humiliation. For the next 10 minutes, Michael described everything: the cruel comments, the public shaming, the panic attacks before PE class. He explained how his grades had dropped and how he had started skipping meals. Then he talked about meeting Sarah and learning what real coaching looked like. "The difference was simple," Michael said, looking directly at the school board members. "Sarah taught me that a good coach builds you up, while Coach Thompson only knew how to tear students down." Emma spoke next, her voice shaking at first but growing stronger as she shared her story. Then came Jenny Morris, talking about the rope climbing incident. One by one, students approached the podium, each with their own story of humiliation and fear. When Sarah Martinez took the stand, she brought her professional perspective. As a certified fitness trainer with 12 years of experience, she explained, "I can tell you that shame is never an effective teaching tool. It doesn't motivate, it destroys confidence, and can lead to lifelong hatred of physical activity." Coach Thompson's lawyer tried to defend his actions, calling them old-school motivation and tough love. But when it was Coach Thompson's turn to speak, his arrogance worked against him. "These kids are too soft," he declared, his face reddening. "In my day, we didn't complain about a little criticism. I get results. Just look at Chen. He finally got in shape because of my methods." Michael stood up. "No, Coach. I got in shape despite your methods, not because of them. I succeeded because I found someone who showed me respect and dignity." Dr. Williams called for order as murmurs filled the room. After a brief discussion among board members, she delivered their decision. "Based on the overwhelming evidence presented today, the board has reached a unanimous decision," she announced. "Coach Bradley Thompson's employment with Lincoln High School is terminated, effective immediately." The room erupted in relief and celebration. Some students hugged each other, while others wiped away tears. Coach Thompson stormed out of the room, his lawyer hurrying behind him. But Dr. Williams wasn't finished. "Furthermore, we will be implementing new guidelines for all physical education teachers in our district. We're establishing a zero-tolerance policy for any form of bullying or shaming by staff members." She turned to Michael and the other students. "Your courage in coming forward has brought about necessary change. This kind of behavior has no place in our schools." After the meeting, people gathered around Michael to congratulate him, but he felt most proud when a freshman girl approached him quietly. "Thank you," she whispered. "I was so scared about taking PE next year because I heard about Coach Thompson. You changed that for all of us." Sarah, who had stayed to support Michael, gave him a proud hug. "See, sometimes the strongest thing we can do is speak up for others." As Michael left the school board meeting with his parents, he felt lighter than ever before. Coach Thompson's words no longer had power over him. More importantly, his stand had helped protect future students from experiencing the same pain he had endured. That evening, Michael received dozens of messages from classmates thanking him for his courage. But the message that meant the most came from Emma. "You showed us that one voice can make a difference. Thank you for being that voice." 1 year later, Lincoln High School was a very different place. The old gym, once a source of fear for many students, had been transformed into a welcoming space with new equipment and colorful motivational posters. But the biggest change wasn't in the building, it was in the students themselves. Michael Chen, now a senior, walked through the gym doors with a smile on his face. He was there early to help set up for the first meeting of the school's wellness club, which he had founded 3 months ago. 20 students were already waiting, ranging from freshmen to seniors, all sizes and fitness levels welcome. "Hey, everyone," Michael greeted them warmly. "Today we're going to talk about finding activities you actually enjoy. Remember our motto, everybody is a good body." The new PE teacher, Ms. Rodriguez, watched from her office with approval. She had been personally recommended by Sarah Martinez and had brought a completely different approach to physical education. Under her guidance, students could choose from various activities, from traditional sports to yoga and dance, ensuring everyone found something they liked. "Michael," Ms. Rodriguez called out, "don't forget we have the district meeting this afternoon. They want to hear about how the peer mentoring program is working." The peer mentoring program had been Michael's idea. Students who felt anxious about PE could be paired with trained student mentors who would support them during class. The program had been so successful that 3 other schools in the district had adopted it. After the morning meeting, Michael checked his phone and found a message from Emma, who had graduated last year. "Guess what? My college is implementing the anti-bullying guidelines you helped create. Your story is still making waves." The guidelines, now known as the Dignity in Education Policy, had spread beyond Lincoln High. They included clear rules against using shame or humiliation as teaching methods, required regular training for coaches and PE teachers, and established safe reporting systems for students who experience bullying. During lunch break, Michael walked to Martinez Fitness to visit Sarah. The gym had grown popular with high school students, and Sarah had even started a special program for teens who needed extra support and encouragement. "Look what came in the mail," Sarah said, holding up a letter. It was from Coach Thompson's new school district, requesting her to conduct a mandatory training session on positive coaching methods. After his firing, Coach Thompson had found a job at a school in another state, but he was required to complete extensive sensitivity training and anger management courses before teaching again. "How does it feel?" Sarah asked, "knowing that your courage changed things for so many people?" Michael thought about it. "Sometimes it still feels surreal," he admitted, "but mostly, I'm just glad something good came from a bad situation." That afternoon, Michael spoke at the district meeting, sharing the success stories from the peer mentoring program. School administrators from across the city attended, taking notes and asking questions about implementing similar programs in their schools. "The key," Michael explained, "is creating an environment where everyone feels safe asking for help. When I was struggling, I thought I was alone. Now students know they don't have to face their challenges by themselves." After the meeting, a mother approached Michael with tears in her eyes. "My daughter started high school this year," she said. "She has the same fears I had about PE class when I was young. But thanks to your program, she's actually looking forward to it. You've changed things for the next generation." That evening, Michael led his regular training session at Martinez Fitness. As he helped a nervous freshman learn proper form for basic exercises, he remembered his own first day there. The scared, shame-filled teenager he had been seemed like a different person now. Sarah joined him as he was finishing up. "You know," she said, "when you first came here, you wanted to change yourself. Instead, you ended up changing the whole system." Michael watched as the freshman successfully completed his exercises, beaming with pride. "The best kind of strength," he replied, using Sarah's own words, "is the kind we use to help others." As he walked home that night, Michael thought about how far he had come. The journey hadn't been easy, but it had led to something bigger than himself. His story had become a catalyst for change, proving that sometimes the greatest victories come not from defeating others, but from helping them become better. The blue hoodie he had once hidden behind now hung in his closet, a reminder of how far he had come. He didn't need it anymore, not because his body had changed, but because he had finally learned the most important lesson. True strength comes from standing up for what's right, even when it's difficult.